In this video, we're going to go through and do a Mac installation and setup of Genymotion, which is another Android virtual device. Now this Android virtual device is very fast. It's got lots of really cool options, and I think it's worthwhile spending some time looking at it. Especially if you've had some problems with some of the other emulators in the past, you might find that this one may work better. So let's go through, and just to be clear, this is for the Mac setup and configuration. There's a separate Windows video for you to watch if you're on Windows. So let's get started. Okay, so Genymotion.com is the website you want to go to. We need to download the software. So I'm going to sign up and create a new account. So I'm going to enter my details. Okay, and I'll say yes to both of those. I'm quite happy for them to send me information. Select a value. I'm going to select personal use, and I'm going to be doing this obviously for training. Now, they do have a paid version, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, and I do suggest if you're a professional developer, you should be paying some money for this tool and using it, but it is free for personal use. Okay, so I'm going to sign up. I'm not going to save any passwords. And I'll then send an email, which I should see in my email account shortly. I now need to activate that. And I need to click on to activate it. Okay, at that point, I'm now logged in and I can now download a Genymotion. So I'm going to click on download. Now there are instructions for various platforms. We're going to start the Mac version, I should say, downloading now while we talk about it. And that's downloading, as you can see there now. That's nearly finished. Now, there are different instructions. With the Windows version, it's a lot easier. You don't need to download two separate packages. But with this version, with the Mac version, you do need to do two. So we're going to go back up to the top, go into the user guide. And it gives you a bit of an overview for each platform. Installing, I'm going to scroll down until I get to Mac. And it says here we need to download and install VirtualBox for OS X hosts. I'm going to click on that, which goes obviously to the site for that package. And I'm just going to select the very latest package here. VirtualBox 4.3.18 was the latest version when I was creating this video, but if it's a later version, that would be okay. So we need to actually install this VirtualBox first before we install the Genymotion software. So I'm just going to click on back. It does tell you that here. It sort of says download and install VirtualBox first. Do a custom setup and make sure VirtualBox networking is enabled, which we'll do, and then we'll continue. So I'm going to go there first. I'm going to go to VirtualBox, and I'm going to open that. I'm going to double click, continue, customize, and they said just to make sure that all these things were clicked. Now obviously everything is clicked there, so there's nothing we can sort of change anyway, so that's all okay. So I'm going to click on install. Now once this is installed, you don't actually need to go into VirtualBox and configure the software. First time I did that, I was a little bit unclear. I thought maybe I had to load up the VirtualBox software and do some configuration. But you don't really need to do that. And it says here from the VirtualBox application, run the VirtualBox applications from the applications folder. So that's where you would do it. And I thought maybe I had to go into new and create a new version and do all sorts of things like that. And I was getting a bit confused as to whether I needed to do that. But essentially you don't. So once you've installed it, VirtualBox, and you can see that it's in your applications folder, you're done with that component. Next thing to do is go back to our downloads, and we now need to run Genymotion. We now need to install that. And this one we will need to do some configuration. So we need to drag both of those into applications. Genymotion shell and also Genymotion. Okay. That's done. So we're finished with that. Now we can close both of these down here because we've finished installing those. Go back into the applications folder. And we now need to run Genymotion. Now we're going to run Genymotion and not the shell. And it did give you some instructions on the page, by the way, saying you should reboot. I didn't bother rebooting it. It still seemed to work just fine. But if by chance you have any problems, make sure you do that reboot. Okay, we don't have any virtual devices yet. Do we want to add one? Well, yes, we do. This is so we can actually run our Android applications. Okay, so we need to sign in first with our username and password that when we created the account. Okay, once we do that, we then get a list of available devices. But one of the things you'll notice here looking at this is there's no API 21 yet. And I did check them out on Twitter, and they have said that they're working away on Android Lollipop. But as of this moment, they do not have an API 21 because it works a little bit differently to the other Android virtual devices that we've set up. On those, you sort of tell it which version to run and effectively load that version. With Genymotion, you have to select from a list of pre-built. So in other words, we can select, say, 4.4.4, which is KitKat, the latest version prior to Android Lollipop. And from there, we can select whichever device we want to run. So we can still run an Nexus 4, but at this stage, we can't run API 21. So that will change in the coming days once they've finished their testing, because one of the things, which I'll show you shortly, is there's an option in their preferences for the updates to come through. So you'll find that eventually there will be an API 21 for you to be able to run it on. But for now, we're going to select a Google Nexus. Now, by default, you can see here looking at the RAM, it's going to allocate 2 gigabytes, 2048 megabytes, and also 8 gigabytes of data disk capacity. It's obviously fairly high if you haven't got sort of really like a lot of resources on your computer, but you can change that. So we'll just accept that for now. Now what it does, the first time you select a particular image, it downloads that off their server. And then if you use that again and again, it won't download again. It'll sort of just download once, which is pretty handy. Okay, so I just paused and resumed. You can see it's got a lot of good features. I'm not going to go through all the features. I'm just going to go through the basics to show you how to set it up. But it has got camera support and good GPS support and remote capabilities, lots of good things. And the other thing to keep in mind also is with the paid version, it's got some extra functionality as well. But we'll just do the basics in this video and get it up and going. So you can see we're done now. The virtual device has been created successfully. So I can click on Finish. We've now got a device there with, again, API 19. Now we can select that device and we can configure it. Click on the little wrench. And this is where we can change some of our memory requirements. So we could maybe reduce that down to 768 if we wanted to. And you've got other options to run it in full screen, which you won't do, or use a virtual keyboard for text input. I'm not going to worry about that, but you can go back to do that. And you can change the dots per inch and so forth. Change resolutions and things like that. We're just going to leave it on the default options for now. Then once that's done, the next option, making sure that's selected, is to start. But before we do that, I just want to quickly go into the settings. You might decide to turn that off if you don't want Genymotion to collect user statistics. And these other options, there's not really a lot there if you're using a proxy server. Basically where the virtual box is set up, which we don't need to worry about because it found it automatically. That's default options are fine. So that's all okay. So there was an option somewhere, I think, I can't remember where it is now, but it will actually update every time you load Genymotion, it will look for new versions. So as soon as they get the Android Lollipop version completed, you'll find that when you're clicking on Add, there'll be an option for you to select a new version, like an API 21 version with Android Lollipop. But for today, what we're doing is fine. We can use that, and we're going to start it now. Okay, I'm going to leave this in real time just to show you how fast this thing boots. Very, very quick. You can see there's lots of options on the right hand side there, which I'll leave you to explore some of those. But there we go, we've booted already. And that was again with less RAM, but significantly faster. So that's a good thing. And I just find that the graphics and so forth seem to be very good. Everything seems to be sort of very smooth from what I can see. When I haven't looked at it a lot in detail. I have certainly tested it out, but it's very nice. And you've got a lot of controls down here on the right hand side. You can't see some of the other ones because of the amount of screen real estate I've got. But you've got sound, and you can rotate the device. You can set up the GPS. You can go into the battery and simulate running out of battery. Do all sorts of things like that. I won't get into that now. All I really want to do is just show you how to get it started, and then go over into our both Eclipse and Android Studio. So let's go into Eclipse now that that's working. Okay, we're going to go into Eclipse like we've done so many times before. Okay, I'm going to close down my Java tutorial and close down all these files. And let's just go to the calculator, the good old handy calculator, and expand that out. And let's run that. You can see straight away it's acknowledged and found the Genymotion Google Nexus. And again, target 4.4.4, that's because we haven't got the API 21. Click OK and tab over to it, and there you go, it's working already. It's working fine. Again, super quick as you can see, which is good. Another thing is, although there is power buttons on here to shut it down, and I don't think you can see it because of the amount of screen real estate, when I selected the power off function, it tended to lock up Genymotion. And it didn't shut down, but doing a bit of reading, I found that they just recommend to close it down as just literally close it down like that when you finish with it, and away you go. So you don't really need to do anything smart about shutting down the emulator. I thought there might have been something sort of fancy you needed to do. Perhaps what I should have done in that scenario was close down Eclipse first before I did it. But what I'm getting at is you don't need to sort of shut down the emulator and let it shut down like you would normally on an Android device. Alright, so that's Eclipse. Let's go into Android Studio. Okay, go into our calculator that we imported in a previous video. Okay, now we need to start, obviously, the emulator again. I did shut it down, so I'll start it again. I just want to show you that it does start up okay and it doesn't sort of crash or anything, even though it's sort of shut it down fairly abruptly. And you can see there to the left-hand side, it's already found the Genymotion Google Nexus automatically. Android Studio has found that, but I'll just wait till it finishes booting. You can see it's working away. And again, it's just super quick to boot, which is fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to Android Studio and run them. Let me just, oops, it's asking me something in the background. I had it set up to ask automatically, and click OK. Go back to it again, and there it is again. Okay, so there you go. That's just a quick tour of Genymotion, and I'll just close down Android Studio. Probably what I recommend you do is you close down the IDE, either Eclipse or Android Studio first, and then you close down Genymotion. But it is a pretty decent tool, and that seems to be the way at the moment to shut things down. So there you go. It'd be worthwhile you trying that and seeing how you get on. And just remember that depending on the amount of RAM you've got in your Mac, you may need to configure this and drop that down dramatically. Basically see how you go. But for me, I found that it's much, much faster. It's the fastest sort of Android virtual device, emulator that I've actually used to date, and I absolutely love it. And the colors and the screen definition is fantastic. Just quickly, I wanted to go back to their web page and go to pricing. I just want to explain the model. So we've got a free for non-commercial use version, which has got those features. But you've also got, if you do spend some money and buy the indie version, pixel perfect. Each pixel is displayed using exactly 1 pixel of your monitor. So that's really just going to make your applications that much more realistic, I suppose. And you've got all sorts of other functionality where you can sort of clone and reset different devices. So a quick way to be testing on lots of different devices, and record videos of your app and those types of things. So there is good reasons to do it. The price ends up at 99 euros, which I think is about $136, which isn't bad, for an indie developer. I think it would be worth it if, say you didn't have an Android device and you were, you're doing this for money. This is your income. I think it's a good investment to reward the Genymotion people for a great product. But you can get started on the free version, and I suggest you do that just to try it out, and hopefully it goes well for you. Okay, I'll leave the video there for now.